Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm here with John Bristowe, and my talented co-host and commenter.
That's yet to be seen. That's yet to be decided. Let's not go too far.
Yeah, we're here to comment on the latest and greatest in technology news. A lot of it around software development, but we're doing some like just general tech stuff as well. So you'll see a little bit of hardware mixed in and just anything topical that, nerds are interested in. We're going to talk about because we're geeks and we do that. How have you been, John?
I've been good. Life's been pretty going on as normal down here in Australia. There's talk of opening some things up. The big thing that's been happening down here is all the sporting competitions have been opening back up a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed, but in New Zealand, they actually have crowds of 40,000 people because they've effectively eradicated COVID from their shores, which is great. Great to see that aspect of life opening up again. I'm a bit of a sportsman myself, so I've been really missing sports. So it's nice to see it back on the TV. Other than that, just keeping my head down, working on a lot of different things at the moment. Things are really busy for us at Octopus Deploy. Life goes on.
Yeah, same here. We've just been really busy at Progress. A lot of us went to mobile, working from home. So we're doing pretty well here. We've got quite a few cool things lined up to talk about today. And we'll go ahead and start with one of your first links here, John, about cool .NET Monitor, an experimental tool. Tell me about this. What is this?
This is a new CLI that's been introduced. It's basically an ability to poll either a local or remote workstation running your .NET applications, your .NET Core applications, to be able to poll them for different diagnostics. You can also get a running list of running processes. You can get a memory dump, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really useful tool. Potentially, as it says in the blog post, it is experimental at the moment, but oftentimes you'll find that when you're running code in production or on a remote machine, it's difficult to gain telemetry because if your applications are running in various environments, you may not have the ability to access things like event logs, etc. So this tool allows you to basically install it either as a CLI or as a container. You can integrate it within your system and then get various metrics through a set of REST APIs, which are mentioned there. So you get a list of processes you can dump based on a process, get its trace logs, its logs, etc. So just an interesting tool that came across my radar and might be one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, this looks like the CLI version of the tool that is inside of Visual Studio. I can't remember the name of it. I know people are going to give me flack for that because it's like it's always there in Visual Studio ready to go. What is that called?
There's lots of
analytics toolbar.
Yeah. There's tons of them.
I never get to use that. I don't work on anything big enough to need it. But it's nice to know where to find these things when you do need them. The CLI looks good. By the way, Lance McCarthy says hi. I know you know Lance from back in the day. And Dan Siegel's in the chat room saying that best things start out as experiments. You would hope that that's how the workflow goes. Sometimes we build things in isolation and kind of release them, and I think that's why you said the best things start.
That's right.
As experiments. Let's see here. We got a little Octopus Deploy action, it looks like.
Yeah, I thought we're on home turf here, so might as well mention it. So Sean Chesna is a member of our customer success team at Octopus Deploy, and he and a few of us at Octopus have been playing around with Raspberry Pi devices. I have one myself. I run Pi-hole on it for my home network. And Sean's been lucky to get a few of them into his house, and he's been playing around with them in a Raspberry Pi cluster configuration. And so for those who aren't aware, Octopus Deploy is a deployment tool, allows you to do a variety of operations for deploying software, including setting up pipelines and workflows and things like that. And Raspberry Pi is sort of a unconventional target that you may want to set up, but especially in a cluster configuration, can simulate a real working cluster. And so what Sean's done in this blog post is provided a rundown of the hardware, creating the cluster, what it looks like, and then the lessons that he learned when going to deploy against it. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm a big fan of setting up these little mini clusters. I think they're kind of fun experiments. From a practical perspective, they are useful on a one Raspberry Pi basis. I can't see much use for them in a cluster orientation, but who am I to say? If you've got a Raspberry Pi, there's lots of great software for it. But maybe at some point in the future, we'll find clusters running in people's homes that are doing some amazing things. But if you are going to deploy to a cluster, this is one way of setting it up and lessons to be shared.
Yeah, this idea of using them in a swarm is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take it and kind of combine their power or use them independently.
Yep.
But it's got my interest as I was scanning through this, because the fact that these run on ARM.
Yes.
And there was another big news item. I don't think I have it. I don't think I have this in our notes.
That's
here.
Fine. I think everyone knows about it.
Yeah. I don't have it. I have a bunch of AR stuff, which also runs on ARM. But so Apple is converting over to ARM, and it looks like in the next iteration of their hardware, they're going to have kind of like a migration step where they have some of their laptops running Intel and some running ARM as
Sure.
they transition fully into ARM is what their plan is. What's your take on that?
Well, we've seen this happen before, right? When they went from the PowerPC chip to the Intel x86 architecture. That was definitely an interesting time. I remember going through that as a university student studying computer science and thinking, wow, this is a big ask, not only for themselves, but also for the developers targeting their platform. This is just yet another iteration, I guess, of Apple's desire to marry the hardware with the software, which is a lofty goal. It's actually a good goal because you can get a lot more performance out of the silicon, basically, if you've got a lot of it leveraging your platform. The thing that I think Steven Sinofsky, he used to run Office and Windows at Microsoft. He wrote a piece about this. He made some good observations around this, saying that what Apple's doing here is actually quite extraordinary, that they're able to do a transition as quickly as they're planning on doing. I think the timeline or roadmap for this is about 2 years, which is amazing. However, they have been working on this for 2 years already. The switch to ARM is obviously going to get that high order bit, which is good performance or great performance running on silicon that's low power, low voltage, etc. So you get great battery life, and with the same performance heuristics that you would normally come to expect on desktop PCs. I think that this is going to push Apple out in front in terms of where they're pushing the boundaries from a hardware perspective. I'll be honest, I was quite surprised that Apple announced this. I thought everything was going fine, but I guess evidently they're looking ahead and they're saying, well, what we know about, the way that things go with silicon, we're not going to get that doubling every 18 months. So, time to look at alternatives, and maybe ARM is the way to go.
Yeah, so Lance is pointing out that they had a bunch of bugs and issues with Intel, and it's been kind of widely known that there was like some thermal issues with one
Sure.
of the latest MacBook Pros. So with past experience with these things, we saw this a lot with the megahertz wars that we had. Intel was kind of guilty of just ramping up their processors and overclocking them as much as possible.
Sure.
And the thermal dynamics take a nosedive at that point, and they, you turn into a processor that just eats power, and the efficiency starts to drop off at some point. And that's when Intel came to eat their lunch the first time. And it looks like they've gotten themselves into that position again, where the Intel processors are running super hot for the performance that you're getting out of them. And not only is AMD catching up, but now you've got ARM throwing their technology in the ring, and it looks like Apple's bid on that.
I was just gonna say, like, ARM is kind of like the redheaded stepchild in all of this, right? Like, I don't know, not ARM, sorry, AMD. I don't know why AMD wasn't given kind of some praise here, because they've been eating Intel's lunch basically on the desktop side for a while. I just got my son a desktop PC, and of course we went AMD because their PC performance is fantastic on their CPUs. So it is interesting. I think you're right, though. I think all the heuristics around performance, voltage, heat dispersion, all that stuff is I'm not a hardware guy, but based on all accounts that I've read, it sounds like you're going to get better bang for buck with ARM. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think in that sense, it's interesting to point out that Microsoft certainly saw this as well. There was a big push, obviously, on the ARM front with Windows, and Sinofsky was one of the key guys behind that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see where things are going. I think Apple will be credited in history as the ones who did it, unfortunately, as all things happen with Apple. We were the ones who invented it. No. So
yeah, like the new update that makes it look like a Windows phone.
Sure. Yeah, the double tiles.
10 years too late.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it goes, the winners write history, I guess. So
yeah, so this will be interesting for me. I've been big on the x86 platform for a long time. I thought it was ridiculous when Apple had the Power PC, and they always claimed it was just as fast, if not better. And then years later, they finally got beat to the punch, and there was a lot of benchmarking that was done to show that really the Power PC was just terrible. Then they decided to finally come over to the Intel side of things, and now here we are. They're jumping ship again. So we'll see how it turns out. ARM's kind of a different story from PowerPC. Obviously, it's gotten a big user base with mobile phones and Raspberry Pi devices, to circle back a little bit. So time will tell if these ARM processors can ramp up and compete with high-end Intel and AMD architecture. We'll have to see. I haven't seen anything, and it may be because there just isn't a platform yet. Maybe these new Apple machines will show us, but I'd like to see something that goes toe-to-toe with like the Intel i9900 or 10th generation series, and just show for raw performance versus processor for processor. I don't think there's an ARM processor that does that.
No, I was just going to say, you're not their target audience, dude. I think the target audience here are people like my dad, the people who buy the latest MacBook, who run phones and then hand down their old ones to their grandkids. Those are the folks that they're targeting, the common consumer. And I mean, just by evidence, I've got the latest MacBook Pro 16-inch. This thing is a beast from a power consumption perspective. It's that 96-watt power supply. And the battery is so big, they've flattened out the laptop so much that they can't get a battery big enough sometimes in these things. So yeah, I think that they're looking at their situation and saying, we can't really tweak out any more performance here without making huge sacrifices in terms of ergonomics, or maybe not, but just like the layout of the machine itself. So I think that they're not looking at you, unfortunately. I think you're going to be stuck with x86 running Windows for a long time. I don't think you guys are going ARM anytime soon, in my opinion. But
when you're doing video encoding or high performance gaming, that's kind of a tough sell to get off of x86. However, we are seeing some promising stuff, and I have some links in here that we'll get to that show this. We're getting to the point where we may be able to start switching over to a more cloud-centric infrastructure for these things. And then you can see the developing picture of ARM being even more important, because you can have low-end, for lack of a better term, like dumb terminal devices running, laptop computing and stuff, and all the horsepower is up in the cloud. So, if you got high enough bandwidth.
I've heard this story before as a kid when I was in my young kid in the 80s. I've heard this story before.
Mainframes are back. They're coming back. I've got a really good link in here to it, so we'll get moving down to the next link here. Let's see here. and the chat's having a good time going back and forth on this too.
That's right. We're just
Windows.
the ones we're lobbing the hand grenades, and they're the ones dealing with the fallout. There you go. What do you mean?
Lance is talking about Windows on ARM as well, and Dan's talking about the video and photo editing. So it's definitely things that we need to consider when we're running ARM. But here, let's try to segue to the proper. Come on, I got ads spamming here.
You need Pi-hole on your network. There you go. This would help you.
Let's see. Nope, that's not it. It is this
Qualcomm.
one.
Yes.
Yes. This is where I wanted to go with that conversation, because this is a really interesting development here. This is in the same line of thought as the switch to ARM. This Qualcomm VR designed for a chipset designed for VR. Mm-hmm. So similar to how ARM is kind of this multi-purpose computing chipset that's designed for like mobile computing, Qualcomm is putting together a Snapdragon processor that kind of outlines a VR reference. So this is something that a lot of vendors jumped on, and they're trying to set like the groundwork for a framework that is going to propel the next generation of AR and VR headsets. So this is kind of creating like a standard among not only, like Microsoft and, well, Apple won't follow along with any of this, but Microsoft and all the telecoms are starting to get on board with this idea. And if all the telecoms get on board, and there's a little bit of it in here, they're talking about upselling to 5G. So the idea is you have this Qualcomm VR processor and a 5G connection, and you put those two things in a headset. You now have the computing power in the cloud that can do all the 3D processing. And if you can get that data back and forth fast enough, you can have some real immersive VR experiences at low cost. So it's a little future facing. I don't think we're going to see this happen overnight, but they're trying to play the long game, I think, with this one. So Qualcomm's stepping in and saying, hey, this is going to be the platform for the future. We're going to put out this reference design. You guys support us with your 5G networks, and we'll make some things happen.
You know what? I always poo-poo this stuff, right? I'm always like, just stop hacking my face, man. Like I've always said that. And I am a bit of a curmudgeon when it comes to this sort of thing. However, for the longest time, I used to make fun of people who would walk around like this with their, their cell phone in front of their face. And it's almost like we're getting to that point now, except that we're kind of almost surgically attaching it to our forehead. I don't know. We'll see. I guess I'm a bit of a skeptic. I don't know whether or not. I think that putting things on your face might be a bridge too far to become hugely mainstream. Like we're not going to see the Wall-E days of VR, AR. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see that if this plays out or not. Now, Lance, of course, is mentioning that contact lenses with AR. Certainly, I've worn contact lenses for over 30 years. So if that was something I could get, sort of like that Terminator vision with the crosshairs showing up, that'd be awesome. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so the Holy Grail is, not exactly this. That's pretty terrible, but something more like the glasses you're actually wearing yourself right now, but with AR capabilities. And that's kind of what this next link is talking about. Is right. we're expecting this Qualcomm reference design to eventually migrate over into something more like this, and couple of years down the road, I think they were saying 5 years in one of the articles I was reading. I don't know if I have that one linked. They're saying 5 years we're going to have the ability to go from this box sitting on your face to clear, normal size glasses.
Yeah.
That are powered from a 5G connection. So almost all the computing can be done in the cloud. All that 3D data processing is what's really intensive, and we can combine that with a high-speed network and do all the computing elsewhere, and then the size of the glasses will come down tremendously, and the less power you'll need, so the battery will get smaller, and so on.
Why are the glasses so big? Like that's the thing I've always wondered. Why are they so boxy? And I've speculated it's got to be either the brains or it's got to be the stuff that it's drawing on the screen. And my guess is that it's probably a combination of both, but it's also the battery. Like the battery is, I think, possibly the biggest thing that needs to improve in order for these devices to get smaller. Because knowing what I know about batteries, they haven't really innovated in the battery space for decades. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So I'll get to that in a sec. Dan says 5G, maybe Starlink.
Oh,
Starlink's
God.
pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
It is. I saw it on the sky after launch. I think just those stream of satellites after launch. That was cool.
Yeah, they're freaking people out. But I signed up for the beta if they get it in my area, I'm going to check it out because my internet's not great. And I'd love to see what they can compete with. We need competition, especially in the States, as far as telecoms go.
Okay.
But the reason these devices are so bulky comes down to a few factors. One of them is all the processing is done on your face right now, unless they're tethered to a PC to do some really, really intensive 3D processing.
Right.
So the Oculus Quest is one of the best devices that's on the market right now. I think it's like $4 or $5.99 in the US. It's pretty heavy on the face though. So there's a lot of weight in the optics for one. It's got two basically magnifying glass or microscopes rather that are focused in on two high definition displays that sit on your face. So there's that. And then powering those high definition displays, you got to have a battery to support that. You also have to support the antenna in it. When I use it, you have the choice of powering games that are running on the device on Android, or you can run it wirelessly through your internal network and run the graphics processing on a PC.
Right.
That thing gets mildly hot on your face when it's doing that. You can only wear it for about an hour at a time before it becomes pretty uncomfortable. Not so much on the eyes, in my opinion, but just on your overall face. It's latched on pretty tight. It's kind of heavy. It weighs nearly a pound. It's wearing something that on your head like that's rough on your neck and your forehead. So yeah, they're pretty heavy.
I'm going to stick to my curmudgeon view on this, which is stop trying to hack my face.
You have not played Half-Life Alyx yet. It is a life-changing experience. You have to check that out sometime.
All right.
It's pretty wild. I'm sure you've probably played Half-Life before, right?
I have, yes. I've walked around in a virtual environment with a virtual crowbar.
So what you don't grasp when you see people playing games on a monitor, or even if you watch VR being played like on YouTube or Twitch, is the fact that to the person that's playing it, those things are life size. So you've played Half-Life. Now imagine that the Combine soldiers and the aliens are 5-6 foot tall and they're standing in the room with you. It's totally different experience than watching it play out on a screen where everything's like little green army men size. So it's very different. It's definitely worth checking out, but you got to have a lot of serious horsepower to run it these days. It's just not, it's not where this article is headed. This is just the beginning of it. And they're saying that this is going to be, if this takes off and they're able to establish this reference design and all the major telecoms agree to it, then it'll propel things to the next generation in the next probably 5 years. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty interesting, and it's pretty gutsy for Qualcomm to come out and say, "Here, we're the ones that are going to lead this this path to virtual reality and AR."
Yep.
So we're streaming right now on Twitch. Nobody's streaming on Mixer.
Right. I wonder why.
Yeah. It's just another one of those things. We're fans of tech in general, but we're fans of Microsoft as well. And Microsoft, why do you do this?
Well, they just shut down all their retail stores. This is well-known history with Microsoft. If things aren't working, they shut it down, basically. So most corporations do this. They give you a 3 to 5 year runway. And if it's not taking out the competition, then it's like, all right, shut her down. So I don't know. I can't speak to the internals around what the decision-making was around this, but I think, a lot of people looked at Mixer and thought, why would I use this, I guess? They paid a few folks like Ninja, etc., to stream on their platform.
Yeah.
What was genius about Mixer's contract, Ninja's contract with Mixer, was that as soon as Mixer went away, I think he got paid out or something like that. That's what I read online.
Oh, that dude made bank.
Yeah. So, but this is the world we're living in, I guess. So a new streaming platform comes online, doesn't work out, gets shut down. So I guess I feel bad for the people who have made a big commitment to Mixer. Obviously, that's obviously a risk that they now have. They have to transition over back to Twitch or YouTube Live or whatever. But I doubt anyone's going to go over to Facebook Gaming. So,
well, I had that opinion at one time.
Yep.
What is Facebook doing with gaming? But remember, Facebook also owns Oculus these days, and Oculus is doing very well. Again, the Quest that I have it's one of the best headsets out there, and it's got its own ecosystem, and it does pretty well for VR. It's one of the better performing VR platforms. Microsoft, though, it's even referenced in the article here. It's like, Groove Music. It's not in here, but the band.
The Zune. What else can I mention?
Band. And then with the stores going away, I think there was another article that's not linked here that was saying, well, is Surface next? I don't think Surface is going to go, but we'll see. Yeah. Dan and Lance are both saying this. Yeah. Windows Phone. Yeah, if you miss Windows Phone, just get an Apple iPhone now, because they're pretty much the same thing. They waited 10 years to roll out the features, but they're there.
They didn't roll out features. They reimagined it.
Yeah.
Come on, get your terminology right.
They did live tiles. What do they call their live tiles? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Who cares?
Same thing.
Yep.
Same thing.
They're just better for my dad to read.
If you
I always use my dad as like the test bed. If my dad can use it, it's usable.
It's like they ripped off the design language and then slowly adopted live tiles. It's just all bad. So this is a piece by a wonderfully talented person that we both know, Sarah Fatz.
Sarah, yeah.
So she has a piece in Computer Weekly talking about how Progress has adapted itself to deal with the pandemic that's going on, and she's really wrote a nice piece on modern software development and how we've positioned ourselves to kind of have a more modern approach to do these type of things, and how we're combining design and UI and UX into the products. And then she's kind of got it from an art and science perspective here. And we've got, DevOps and CI/CD and AI and all of those things. It's just kind of a take on how we've changed gears over the last couple of years and kind of aligned ourselves with this new way of thinking, and it's working out really well for us. So it's a good read. It's nice to see a familiar face in computerweekly.com. So congratulations to Sarah. I think it's a really well written and thought out kind of take on what we're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, that evolution towards DevOps is also evolving. People are, DevSecOps and SysOps, and what does modern ops look like? This is a space that actually we're looking into heavily at Octopus Deploy, because that's part of our, obviously we're a part of that space. So DevOps is definitely interesting. I think that you know, there's different types of acronyms you'll come across: SREs, site reliability engineers. That's the Google nomenclature. This is definitely a sort of an evolution towards craftsmanship and thinking ahead of time around, you know, what is the security going to look like for this thing? What is the reliability? What are the metrics around that? How are we going to target that? How can we do this in a safe and sane way? How can we get humans out of the process, focus on some automation more and more? But, you know, if you talk about DevOps, it's people and processes before tools. But certainly there's definitely a role for tools. So yeah, definitely good to see major places like Progress, etc., thinking about these things in a very good way.
Yeah, that's I'm putting in chat here. I'm
right-click publish
to Lance. I'm saying I right-click publish. That's me. That's my CI/CD pipeline. Don't at me on that one.
Right. Why don't you do it on a Friday while you're at it?
That's the one place I will admit that it's not my wheelhouse. I will do front end, back end. I will do machine learning and AI, but don't ask me to deploy any of the things I create. That's for somebody else to do.
Yeah, leave it up to guys like us. Come on, what are you doing?
Yep, I will call you,
sure.
John.
You don't need to call me. You just download a trial.
you will feed the hamsters.
It's a shameless plug there, isn't it? That's hilarious.
But Sarah's, we're lucky to have Sarah. She's somebody, if you want to follow and see what the up and coming trends are, that's somebody that's got their eye on what's happening. So make sure you check that out. And then this is a final one. This is like not tech related directly at all. Jesus, lose weight fast. No thanks. Let's get the ads off the screen. Giant watermelon slice here. So, you know, all of us are working, well, not all of us, but I'm assuming many of us are working at home in the tech industry right now because, you know, our industry is aligned with being able to network from home and work remotely. So I thought this was an interesting one because, you know, exercise is hard enough when you're not at the office. It seems to be worse. So I thought this one was good and it caught my eye, and it's how to quit drinking soda. And there's like a bunch of alternatives out there.
Sure.
To help, you know, break you of that habit. I've never been a big soda drinker.
I never got into this. I don't know how people get into that vice, but you know, there are some good ways I would imagine getting out of it. I drink sparkling water quite religiously, and if you've got you can get a Soda Stream. Those things are awesome. I don't know if they recommend that in the article here, but Soda Streams are great. You just get those canisters, you just refill them at you know, they sell them everywhere basically, and then you just make your own water basically. So
yeah. I have to try those out sometime. Yeah. So there's a bunch in the US. I don't know how these translate across. I'm sure other countries have their own versions of these. Spindrift is a really good one that I actually drink. And this is like not ad placement by any means. I'm not sponsored by any of these people.
Sure.
These are good. They're relatively expensive though. So you're gonna pay like twice what you pay for like a can of soda or something like that. But what I like about these is they're sparkling water, but they actually have like real fruit juice as well. So they actually taste like real things. Where some don't. I'm not a stand-up comic. I'm stealing this joke from somebody. I can't remember who. It may have been like Jim Gaffigan. He said it was, I think it's like LaCroix or whatever. Tastes like water that was bottled next door to a place that cuts fruit or something like that. It's like they're neighbors. They're not even done in the same building. But that's kind of where these things lie. These bubbly actually taste similar to a real like soda, but they don't have any, you know, zero of anything. It's just flavored bubbly water. So those are pretty good. But there's a whole laundry list of different types of like seltzer waters, and there's the good old LaCroix. Those are a little floral to me. But there's lots of alternatives these days. It looks like this is like a breakout.
Just get a
product.
soda stream. What are you doing buying all this aluminum? This stuff ends up in the ocean anyway. Just get a soda stream. Recycle.
Exactly. It's actually a good one. I don't know if it's on here. We should look through here and see. But there's it says 20.
Look at all that plastic and aluminum.
I don't like those. Wife drinks
Hey,
those.
there it is, San Pellegrino. That's my jam too. That's the good stuff.
I think beer's probably beer's not soda, so that's an alternative.
That's like Homer asking, does whiskey count as beer? So
but there's some good alternatives in here. Like seriously though. There's some good ones. Soda Stream's a really good one. I'm surprised they didn't mention. Maybe they didn't get paid, so they're not in this article. I don't know how these things work.
If you go down this road of getting kind of like the sugar into that sugar demon, it is hard to kick. So try your best. There are alternatives out there. Get a soda stream, but also know that you're trying. Getting off the sugar is definitely the first step.
Yeah, Dan's on point again. Cut up some stuff and put it in some water, let it float around a little bit. That actually works pretty well. If you've been to the Microsoft campus, John, I know you probably have been up there enough to know. They do this at their in their offices. So they have like 2 or 3 different flavors of just like water with different fruits floating in it. And you just walk up throughout the day and grab. But again, we're not working from the office, most of us. So that was kind of the idea here, is to show that there's other things you can get. There's things that even aren't listed here that like flavored waters and soda streams and all that stuff. It's all good.
Gotcha. Speaking of 20 something lists, I actually added another list for you in the Trello board. And it's something that I actually caught my attention recently. It's the 25 greatest Java apps ever written. And this was published on Oracle's blog. And there's some doozies in there. It starts off a little bit weak, but it starts to get a little bit stronger as you go through the list. So I thought that would be interesting for us to also look at. I got that list in the Trello board if you got that one there.
Sure. Let me pull that up real quick. So we had someone asking about help with Kendo UI there. Lance is going to take and make sure that they're taken care of. Lance is the guy. He will get you either help or connect you with somebody that can.
So here you go. The 25 greatest Java apps ever written. Beautiful.
The greatest Java apps ever written?
I know. Hey.
It's a low bar, man. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, guy. Come on.
I like Java. Java's fun.
I'm kidding.
Java's good.
It's all good.
So there's some obvious ones in there, but I thought it was kind of interesting just to look at a few of them. Like they start off with the space exploration one, so the Final Frontier. So there's the Mars Rover Controller, there's the Deep Space Trajectory Explorer, etc. Whirlwind. And then if you keep going, it gets into like the server side of things. The more interesting ones are in the worlds of fun and things like that. So data intensive. Okay, so Wikipedia search, Hadoop, obviously, it's probably a massive one that a lot of people are familiar with. Yep. And then Minecraft is the most obvious one. A lot of people will mention Minecraft when we talk about.
Is that still Java these days? Yeah. I thought they rewrote that.
So yeah, Minecraft, and then Java applets, of course. We've all written those. Codes of Honor, NetBeans, IntelliJ. These are bringing back some memories for me, for sure.
How dare they list Eclipse as a great app ever written?
Yeah.
No offense if you use Eclipse, but that thing's a nightmare. I had to use it one time, and I never wanted to touch it ever again. Just my experience with it was bad. Yep. I'm not going to pick on all the Java stuff.
Jenkins is a major one as well. That one's used quite heavily with folks.
Oh yeah. Now that's a good one.
So, yeah,
I will
side it's ugly, but it works really well. Like it.
Well, it's Java, so.
Jeez. WebLogic, Eclipse Connections, etc. There's a lot mentioned there. Some of the ones that you could add to this list include things like Cassandra. They don't mention the Spring Framework or Tomcat. Android obviously is probably the most notable one that's missing, in my opinion. So yeah,
So I'm going to be a total jerk here again. Is there anything on this list that isn't a UX nightmare?
Just Android, curious. Maybe Android's pretty good. No,
yeah, yeah. Android's not, well. Android isn't. I don't know if I'd put Android in the same bucket, because Android is a Google. Materials like a Google thing. And if you step outside of the Google Android and get somebody else's fork of it, it's not the same.
It's not entirely Java. I mean, it's not fair to mention like the kernel and the I think there's parts of it are C++. But
it's true. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And then I guess you could mention Dart as like being inspired by a few things as well.
I guess Minecraft's UI isn't that bad.
No, it's excellent actually. I like it a lot. Very blocky.
Yeah. It is blocky, but it's intuitive.
It's early for me. Come on, I got nothing.
It's so easy. John can use it. So.
Yep, that's right.
My kids had to show me
I just thought this was interesting. I'd be interested to see other lists like this for other languages, like top 25 or the 25 greatest .NET apps, the 25 greatest. I mean, JavaScript would blow everyone out of the water, basically. But just to kind of like the 25 greatest scheme apps, the 25 greatest Prolog apps, things like that. That would be kind of fun. Just
here's a good one.
Sure.
This is good UX and good, good useful app and everything. IntelliJ.
Yep.
Absolutely nothing wrong with IntelliJ. I would say if I was asked to do Java, this is where I'd gravitate. Last time I did Java was for a Salesforce app. Like this was probably 10 years ago or more. So that was my last experience with Eclipse, and I think they call it Eclipse because it's similar to a real eclipse. If you look at it for long enough, it will ruin your vision.
It can blind you.
Yeah, it will blind you. I really don't like Eclipse.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll go out there and I will put my name on that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think languages like Java really do a lot of their heavy lifting in the back end, I think, and so. AWS is a good example. So they don't get their proper props, if you will. But I think that's why people kind of try to make fun of these things from time to time. We'll see. We'll see how it goes with their language if other lists come out. So,
and that's where a nice premium product like IntelliJ steps in and says, "Hey, we can do this better."
Sure.
And I mean, Eclipse is open source and those things have their place too. But if you're, looking for productivity and you want all the bells and whistles and everything with a quote out of the box experience, grab something like IntelliJ. That's a good one, John. We don't give the Java folks.
We need more. We need more top 25 lists, I guess. So
yeah. All right, man. So. That's it, I think, for our show today. We'll collect some more links and be back next week. So we look at doing this. This is the new time for the show. This is a little bit easier for us both to hit. It's about 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. John, I don't know what it is in Upside Down time.
6 a.m.
6 a.m. in the other parts of the world.
Sure. So the world's basement.
John's in Australia, so it takes the processor a little bit of extra compute power to turn his avatar, his video feed right side up for you all.
That's right. So Hey, genetically, the eyeball does flip your eyeball does flip the image that's coming into your eyeball, and that was discovered in Australia. I don't know.
Oh man,
I'm making stuff up now.
So while we still have a few minutes, that reminds me of a really weird article that I read once, and I wish I could find it. I know if I search, I still won't be able to find it. But like back in, I don't know the date exactly. This was like when you could experiment on people and not get like a huge amount of backlash from the public. I know that sounds terrible, but they had these devices that looked like VR headsets. So picture a VR headset, but there's no technology in it. It's just mirrors and lenses. They would put these on people and reverse the eyes image. So you would have a little what do you call it? Like a lens that would take the picture and focus that image to the right eye and the left image or right image to the left eye, and reverse your image, like what each eye is seeing. And they put it on these people for like a week, and your brain will actually adapt to it and correct the image. And like they were getting all sorts of like motion sickness and all kinds of craziness out of it. Oh yeah, Lance is on the same page with me. He says upside down glasses will correct after 3 days.
Sure.
So
it's a well-known phenomenon. I mean, they do this with it's called mirror therapy. They do this with people who are looking to regain movement after stroke, for example. So the idea here is you're training your brain to see your opposite limb that may not be functioning correctly because of brain injury. So if you can use your right side of your body or your left side, you basically put the mirror on one side, and then you're training your brain to see your other side of your body functioning so that it can, I guess that's the theory behind it. So
yeah, your brain will actually relearn these things. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. It's the same thing that lets you use like a baseball bat or drive a car, that type of stuff. It's pretty wild. So just random thought, but I think it's pretty cool. Especially when you start talking about AR and VR, that stuff comes into play again. There was another read I had last week. There was a person that was complaining that using AR or VR too much can damage your vision. And I was reading through this article, and apparently it can invoke a response that makes you have something similar to dyslexia.
Interesting.
And I got through the entire article, and I got to the bottom, and it was like, so-and-so is a VR developer and claims to have worn his VR glasses 6 hours a day with 30-minute breaks in between. I was like, whoa, wait, hang on. 6 hours a day? Pump the brakes a little bit. Like, that's a long time. Remember I said this thing is uncomfortable after an hour?
Sure.
Could you imagine 6 hours a day, every day, wearing a VR headset? Yeah, I could see how that might damage your vision a little bit. If that's your job, just like any other job, you have health hazards that come with your work environment. You might want to take a break off the 6 hour a day VR experience.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure I've never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have slight dyslexia. There's a font you can download called Dyslexia Font that my wife told me about recently. It's at dyslexiafont.com. And allows people who suffer from dyslexia to read what they're reading a little bit better. I find that my brain kind of, I don't know what it is. I start reading something and I have to read again, and then it finally clicks. So yeah, this is the font here. So it's a unique font that people can use to install to help them possibly read a little bit more easily.
We were talking about this on my Twitters one day.
Okay.
So there's actually somebody that was saying that this is similar to the way Comic Sans looks. And Comic Sans is actually very easy for people to read.
Yes.
That have dyslexia. And I thought it was interesting because my wife had put Comic Sans on her phone, and she may or may not have dyslexia. I don't know. She's never been diagnosed with it, but she seemed to like it a lot. And I was teasing her about it until I found out like it actually might be good for some people. And I was like, oh man, now I feel bad.
Reading out loud is definitely not one of my strengths. If you ever want to have a good laugh, just get me to read you something. I think fonts like this, maybe I'd never heard of AR, VR, a link between that and dyslexia. That's interesting. So
yeah, they said it was something similar. Like it would like mimic the behaviors of it. Did something about I don't know if it was the strain on the eye or if it was something with your brain, but eventually you could have issues if you use it too much. And apparently too much is 6 hours plus a day. But
love how you and I both without medical degrees can comment on this as if we have some opinion on it.
it's the trend these days, man. What are you talking about?
Look, I'm just going to go based on what I saw on YouTube and repeat that as fact. So there you go.
I mean, of course. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what you want to debate wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We're not
Yeah.
going to go there. Science wins, I hope. But that seems to be the debate here in the States, is like science versus I saw it on YouTube and because the president said so. So we won't get political, but yeah, there's typefaces to help people with dyslexia. And this is one, and I had heard through my Twitter peoples that Comic Sans is another. So there is a positive use for Comic Sans after all.
Yeah, I'd like to see this running inside of VS Code, see if it helps.
Yeah, personally, I don't know if I would.
Maybe
use
my
it,
programming will
but,
get finally better. I can finally stop writing so many errors. Maybe
Yeah,
that's my problem.
That's not your
Not
problem.
my lack of knowledge. It's the I'll blame it on the font. There we go.
So my personal
I finally have an out for all my errors.
Yeah.
Oh, did you
Blame it on
notice
the
the new?
fonts.
I meant to mention this. Did you notice the new UI look for GitHub? Whilst you're on GitHub, they
Yeah,
redesigned everything. Yeah,
yeah, it's interesting.
yeah, a little bit more spacious.
So yeah, I've seen some good
New
comments
fonts.
about.
Yeah,
You
new
know,
fonts.
there's a bunch of features that people ask for, and rounded corners is not one of them. Is the quote that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, they've added a lot more to the right-hand side, and they were starting to expose more capabilities of the platform, which I think is something that maybe people don't appreciate is there with GitHub. I think people just see it as a code repository tool. That's it.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite fonts here, Firacode.
Mm.
This one is really good with the ligatures. I think those are nice. And it goes either way. Some people don't like ligatures. I do. I have them on. But what's nice about it is it's a personal preference that only goes on your IDE, and it doesn't like bleed over from project to project. So if I clone a
Interesting. So
repo, it doesn't show up in somebody else's.
So okay, so these are in I guess local font replacement caricatures, I guess is what you're saying. So if I go bang equals, it will replace it with the not equals.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So I can open any file with this font and it automatically puts those symbols in place of the other ones. And
yeah, the other trend I've seen is people using emojis in code. And I know that some programming languages don't support it, others do. But that would be interesting to see, you know, if that would be an evolving trend. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the ones that I like the best here, let's see if this zooms in or not. Yeah,
the comparisons.
Yeah, the comparisons are nice because greater than and equal and less than and equal can get a little squirrely when they look like this right-hand side. Just because one of them is valid in one of them is like, let's see. So if you do equals first, that's a lambda is what I'm thinking of. So you want to write it this way, not the other way. And you'll pick up on that one pretty quick. So I write a lot of lambdas. So those get converted over. I'm trying to find out where they're at. They give you the nice arrow instead of, it's kind of like this one, but without the other arrow on the other side.
Yeah, I like this. This is good. This is good. I would like to see emojis incorporated at some point, you know? It would be kind of cool to see that.
There is a plugin for Visual Studio, I think, that will do emoji. I had it on. Oh no, it was let's see. It was on I was on Jeff Fritz's show when I was on there. Laser emoji. There's a framework that you can get for like every platform that will do let me try GitHub or not GitHub, NuGet. So there's one for Blazor now that will let you put emojis in your Blazor. And it's also for every platform. Emoji file picker. Ah, crud, I can't find it now. Yeah, but there's one where it sets up a component that you could just call and put emojis in your app. So if you want to display them or whatever, you have a nice quick shortcut to do that. And then it's like for Angular and React and all those too. So you can just put emojis in the actual working part of the app on the display side.
The thing I like ligatures for the most is representing obviously equations, mathematical equations, when the very few times you actually have to do them. But I don't know if you've done any equation work in a programming language, especially a functional language. You know, when you start doing these sort of like just writing out like something like I guess Pythagoras' theorem in a programming language, it does look kind of weird. Like it's like, you know, you just all these square brackets and, you know, hat symbols and things like that. So if there would be a better way of representing those things, these ligatures obviously bring us that way. That would be nice.
Yeah, I'd say if you're writing some Haskell or Elixir, this is probably coming in pretty handy. You can see all the wild things that you can use in there. Because that's a functional language, so there's a lot of things like F# too, where you can pipe, and pipe comes out as a nice arrow. So that's really helpful stuff. I love my Vr code. That's like one of my default installs right there, along with VS Code and all those things. That gets installed right there with it. All righty. So I think that's it for the show today, John. Unless you have anything to add.
No, everyone stay safe, and hopefully, you know, we're all becoming better developers through all of this, and learning and doing all the things we need to do. So,
yep. Hope you all had fun. Stop in and check the channel out throughout the week. We've got other shows that are coming up, so keep your eye. Make sure you follow. Lance, Dan, thanks for commenting in chat, joining us today, and we'll see you all around.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
See you.